Hi, my name is Felipe, and in this video lesson, we're going to be talking about how to write an introduction for IELTS Academic writing task number 1. Yes, that's numero uno. And yes, I know a little bit of Spanish. There is one thing I want you to know right out of the gate, and that's you don't have to be creative to write a good introduction. You don't have to be interesting. You just have to report the task using different words or different structures. You have to paraphrase it. How can you paraphrase successfully? One, you can use synonyms or different structures that sort of act as synonyms. You're going to see some examples in a few seconds. Switching the class of the word. For example, making a noun into a verb into a noun. And you can also rearrange the order in which the information comes. Not to change the information, but the order it appears. And you can achieve that by switching from active to passive voice or vice versa, or adding a relative clause here or there. To show you how easy it is, I prepared 4 examples. These are 4 tasks from IELTS that I wrote an introduction to. Yes, I wrote it myself. These are my babies. And I'm going to walk you through how I did it. Let's go. Our first example is a bar chart. You can see that I color-coded both the task and my introduction, so you can see how everything is connected. The task was, the bar chart below shows the percentage of Australian men and women in different age groups who did regular physical activity in 2010. My introduction was, the chart given illustrates how many Australian men and women of distinct generations exercised regularly in the year 2010. So what did I do? I changed the first phrase, the bar chart below. This is a phrase that you're going to see in many tasks, and that's because in the exam, the graph or the chart is going to be immediately below the task. And so that's why it says the bar chart below, the graph below, yada, yada, yada. But our answer is not going to be above the graph, so we can't use it. It's going to be on another page. So my solution to that, and the one you're going to see that I used in all the examples, is the word given. The chart given. Then I changed the verb show, which is very generic, for a synonym, illustrates. I changed the percentage of Australian men and women to how many Australian men and women. How many is not a synonym to percentage, but it's a nice structure to talk about numbers, be it percentage, multiples, fractions. We can use it to talk about numbers in general. Then in different age groups, I switched to of distinct generations. Generations is working as a near synonym to age groups, and distinct as a near synonym to different, but of a higher register. Now the next bit, the relative clause, who did regular physical activity. I changed that to exercised. Do physical activity, exercised. I shrinked it to just the one verb. I was more concise than the task. And I changed the adjective regular to the adverb regularly. I'm showing the examiner here that I'm aware of word families. Remember, using the same word but a different class, adjective, adverb. And the last one, I didn't do much. There isn't much to do. I just added the word in the year. So instead of in 2010, we have in the year 2010. It doesn't change much, but I felt like I could do it, so I did it. And there it is. All right, second, we've got maps now. The task was, the maps below show the center of a small town called Islip, as it is now, and plans for its development. Nice task. My introduction. The given maps depict the town center of Islip, a small town, in the present, as well as plans for its future. The first phrase I did exactly as last time. Instead of using below, I used the word given. In this time, the given maps. I changed the verb show to the synonym depict, which comes from the same root as the word picture. So it's really appropriate to use this verb to talk about maps. I changed the phrase the center of a small town to the town center. I was more concise. That is good. And I added the fact that Islip is a small town between commas. This shows the examiner that I understand how punctuation works in English and that I can use it successfully. Notice that if I wanted to remove a small town, my sentence still makes sense. The town center of Islip in the present. It can be easily removed. So that's a good use of punctuation. As it is now, that was easy. I just used synonym in the present. The next bit was a bit trickier, and plans for its development. I didn't go with a direct synonym. I opted to use a rough paraphrasing. I went with the word future because it creates a contrast with the word I used earlier, present. So we got present and future. And instead of using and, I went with as well as to give my introduction a little bit more and impress the examiner. All right, example 3. This time we've got a diagram showing a process. The task was, the diagram below shows how geothermal energy is used to produce electricity. And this time I have 2 possible introductions. 1, the given diagram demonstrates how electricity is produced in a geothermal power plant. And my second introduction was, the given diagram demonstrates the process of how geothermal energy is converted into electricity. Let's start with my first introduction. Again, I used given, the given diagram. Again, I switched the generic verb show to another synonym, this time demonstrates, which is particularly suitable for a process. I kept the word how, but notice that I changed the order of the elements. Instead of going geothermal energy is used, I went with electricity is produced. It's still passive voice, but it's a whole new sentence. And then I added a geothermal power plant instead of geothermal energy. But then you might say, well, Felipe, but it doesn't say geothermal power plant in the task. Where did you get that from? I got that from the diagram. If you look at it, you can see that it has a title, geothermal power plant. So there you go. That's a hack. If you find any useful words in the diagram or table, you can use them in your introduction. In my second introduction, I stuck to only what we can see in the task. The given diagram, again, demonstrates, again. This time I added the process of how. I could have just used how, but this time the word process fit, so I went with it. It doesn't change the meaning, but again, it's an extra word that wasn't in the task that I can use without changing the meaning. I went with geothermal energy. I didn't try to use a near synonym or paraphrase it. What I did though was I paraphrased the phrase is used to produce, and I changed it to is converted. So that's a near synonym. I'm converting the geothermal energy into electricity. There isn't much I can do about the word electricity, really. So I just leave it as it is. In our fourth and final example, here we've got pie charts. The task was, the 3 pie charts below show the changes in annual spending by a particular UK school in 1981, 1991, and 2001. My introduction. The charts given contrast how the yearly expenditure of a certain British school changed through the years 1981, 1991, 2001. In the first phrase, I did what I did in all those previous times. Instead of saying below, I used the word given. 3 pie charts below became the 3 charts given. Instead of using a synonym for the verb show this time, I went with contrast how, because I just felt it was suitable. The verb contrast means to show the difference, to show what's different. And that's what the pie charts are doing. They're showing the difference between the expenditure in 1981, 1991, and 2001. Notice I changed the order a little bit, and I went with the yearly expenditure of. Yearly expenditure is just a synonym for annual spending. Really, that's it. It's a synonym. Then instead of saying a particular UK school, I again used synonyms. Instead of UK, British. And instead of particular, I used another adjective, certain. A certain British school, but it's the same idea. Now this is cool. Notice that I'm using change. It's the same word that is in the task, but in the task, it was being used as a noun, as a plural noun, changes. In my introduction, I'm using it as a verb. I'm showing the examiner that I know how to use word families to my advantage. Then to finish, notice that instead of just listing the years in 1981, 1991, and 2001, I went with the phrase through the years. Column, 1981, 1991, 2001. It doesn't change the meaning, but I felt I could get away with it, so I added that phrase. That was it. Those were my 4 examples. I hope that they helped me show you that writing a good writing task number 1 introduction is not about being creative. It's not about writing an interesting introduction. It's about paraphrasing the task. And that's it. That's all. And that you can do that by using synonyms or structures that work as synonyms, by being more concise, getting a phrase and turning it into a word, changing the class of words around. If you're giving a noun, try to use it as a verb, or vice versa. An adjective, try to use it as an adverb. And reordering the information. You don't have to add new bits of information, you just have to move it around the introduction. Now you're probably thinking, geez, Felipe, that was great. I sure learned a lot. I guess I should practice now. And yes, you should. So here's homework. Go into the comments and write an introduction to this task. I'll take a look and tell you what I think. See you next time. Ciao.